Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm gonna talk about season 2 of the Santa Clarita Diet. Sorry. Obviously not going to beat around the bush, obviously going to jump right into spoilers. So obviously if you have not seen all of season 2, do not listen to this because I will spoil things for you. All I can say is phenomenal season. Check it out if you haven't already. So you have been warned ahead of time. If you are listening all the way through, that means that hey, you've seen all the season, you just kind of want to hear me talk about it. So, and here we go. Fantastic season. I feel like I think and then along with everything that happened, I think I like this season more. I was actually surprised that there was no more Dr. Wolf, but I guess I was like, well, they got the little treatment from her to make it so that like the zombieism doesn't spread any further, get any worse. It's like, oh, you are what you are, so that's kind of neat. So I guess like there was no more need for her, but I would think, well, because they haven't really, well, they're learning little bits and bits about it. And that's something I really appreciate about the season too, is like they expand upon like the whole zombieism. We actually found out this season exactly what it came from, and more about it. So it just, there's a lot to it. So for one, finding out that basically those little things that they like throw up actually turn into little things with like spider legs. I don't know if they turn anything beyond that, but it was kind of interesting finding out that those things are alive. And not only that, but it's also connected to some like old order, like that dude Paul that pops up throughout the show, like him. And it seems like his wife or girlfriend Marcia isn't one. It just seems like it's Paul because he's like, oh, this is my sacred duty. So because Sheila and Joel had told in the book, he's like, oh, there's a shield with that symbol on, so it seems like that's an order of people who kill the undead. He even has a tattoo and stuff like that, which is so interesting. But nevertheless, that was just kind of a nice, like it, because we still don't know 100%. It does seem like it is something connected to whatever went down in Serbia. It does seem like it's probably more like an illness thing, whatever the whole deal is, So I appreciate them expanding upon that. We also got introduced to some more zombie undead this season. One other one ended up being Ramona. I did not see that coming. The moment like Eric went to the store and was like talking to Ramona, I was like, Ramona's back. I love that. I was back in my mind, I was like, now this makes it so that everyone has met Ramona amongst the main cast except for Sheila. Joel's actually met her twice last season, so I thought that's kind of an interesting thing. And it's like, oh, wow. And then Ramona's just giving him advice and everything. It's like, there she goes. Ramona's just being the best. And she's like, you got blood on your shoe. I'm like, because she's like, oh, yeah, here's this bleach would be best for getting out blood. He's like, how do you know? She's like, you got some on your shoe. I was like, what? Oh, man, Ramona's super cool. And it was like, oh, my God, she's an undead. Plot twist I didn't see coming in. That was super good. So I was like, oh, crap. Because this actually expands it, because I appreciated it too, because the only other undead they had met last season was Loki, and it's like, well, Loki became one because Sheila bit him, so it's kind of like, oh, how did she become one? And obviously later on we find out, like, it's part of the same reason why Sheila became one. But I felt so bad for Eric and everything. It's like, oh man, she's like, oh man, she's good. Oh man, obviously she probably killed her boyfriend because that she was like, well, me and my boyfriend, we broke up, and it's like, oh, then it cuts to her just opening her freezer. It's like, oh man, she killed. It's like, oh man, Eric's in so much trouble. She's trying to get close to him. You have Abby pushing Eric to be closer to her, and then it's like, oh man, and it's like, oh, they ended up having sex, in Eric's words, 3 times. I love that whole conversation where Abby was like, yeah, he's like, well, really, yeah, I appreciate you trying to come and see me, but it literally took you 40 minutes. I'd be dead way by now. She's like, yeah. He's like, you didn't take the route I told you to get here. She's like, yeah, I didn't. But then it turns out, oh, Ramona's just using him, and it's like, oh, that's so heartbreaking. And then it took conversations with Sheila and Joel to make her go, oh, I need a Joel in my life. So the whole thing of her wanting Eric, and she's just like, well, thanks a lot, guys. Now she's never going to let me go. Which is like, oh man, there's like any guy's dream of want a woman to want him that much, but it's like under those circumstances, you don't want someone to want you like that. So, but luckily, things ended well for Ramona. She's moving to Seattle because it's like, well, can't have 2 undead people. Well, 2 undead kind of using the same place as hunting ground. So that was kind of I would have been super bummed if they would have had to kill Ramona. So luckily they didn't have to. So But speaking of Eric and Abby, I do appreciate their relationship this season because it's just kind of like you could tell it bothered Abby a little bit, but she's like, well, it's because her mom kind of chalks it up to be like, oh yeah, you just hate sharing your best friend because like it's like because and it's something that comes up is because like they are in this together, like they have each other. Like he's the only person she can really talk to about everything that she's going through and just everything with her parents. It's like, my God, like mom's killed someone else, like something like that. She can only have that conversation with Eric because Eric is weirdly weird about things because it's like, oh, like Sheila broke her thumbs in the first episode and it's like, oh, he fainted, but then it's like the dude being ripped apart in the kitchen in the first episode. He's like, man, I knew I shouldn't have let her off the chain. See what happens when I just like take my eye off her? And then like at one point he's coming back into the kitchen, a piece of flesh falls into him. He kind of rolls his shoulder and let it falls off, and he keeps talking. It's like, it's so weird you're so weird with what bothers you. I guess it's because, I don't know, Eric just so, I guess because for Eric it's like, well, this is, I don't know. I guess because for him he's talked about it before how much he loves like Abby's parents. He loves the Ammons. It's kind of like Sheila and Joel like are the best to him. So I guess that's why he looks at anything that they do, but unless it's physical harm to themselves or anything like that. It's, I don't know. But it's just like what bothers him just kind of got me. But anyway, because Abby tried, going with that dude Sven, and it's kind of like, well, she can't tell him everything. There's a whole like her bashing that dude Christian in the face with the Trey. Because I like that progression of her character because of everything that she's going through along with her family and she's been exposed to. She's kind of freed herself a little bit more. Like her mom isn't the only one that's changed because of these circumstances. Joel has changed as well as her. And she's just kind of like doing what she feels like, and it's just kind of like because she even kind of admits like she was scared not because she was what kind of trouble she in, but it's because she really liked smashing Christian in the face with that. And she started talking at Sven, and he was kind of looking at her weird, and it's like the only person that won't look at her and judge her is Eric because he's like super cool about it. And then it's just kind of like oh man, like, but we're friends. And obviously there's more to that, but I guess because neither one of them really wants to take that step forward, just because I think for Abby, it's like super weird and awkward because it's like, yeah, you are kind of like my best friend now. Because she can talk to him about stuff that she couldn't talk about to anyone else. But it's also in that weird situation of like, if we do take that step forward, things will kind of get weird between us, even though we've literally kissed twice at the end of this season, and obviously he kissed her last season too, so they've kissed twice, and so it just I'm curious to see where there's like, I think it's more so just like, it's just anytime she's like, oh man, did I ever told you how much I love you? She's like, oh, she's like, as a friend, he's like, yep, all the time. Just that back and forth. It's super good. And I also appreciate that Abby is kind of the smart one, because like this season pushes it even further, just like how terrible her parents are at this whole murder and covering things up. It's like they're complete and utter. They are like, if you were to write a book about the show Dexter, but 100 tips on how to be Dexter for dummies, they'd be excelling at it, because that's just how they are. And you have Abby being a smart one, and I love how she's super sarcastic and tears her parents down. It's just like that's why we want to tell you things, because then you're going to judge our parenting, but hey, it's parenting nonetheless. So other things like I loved about this season, Joel's situation at that facility he was in. I was surprised he was in there as short as he was. I kind of I knew he would get out sooner or later because of the old previews and everything. Most of his story in the first episode was just him in there and getting out. And it's just like, oh man, you've actually shown that you care about someone. I felt so bad for that lady running the place, because she's like, oh, the only time I get to talk to sane people is when they're saying goodbye. And she's like, oh yeah. And it was even morbid too, because she's kind of like, oh, we never actually fix people here. It's more like a band-aid. It's like, as a medical professional running, helping run this facility, trying to, help people, should you rather be saying that? But I guess it's because it's like, oh, he's cured and he's fine. So it's like, oh, he's a great example. So it's fine with him knowing, I guess. But he's like, Joe's like, oh, well, bye. And immediately leaves and goes try and buy some Serbian bile from that morgue dude, which I was like, yeah, morgue dude is back. Sadly, it was only in one episode. But I was like, oh man, he really loves his job. I wonder how many other people he does that for, because he was super excited when Joel was coming back. He's like, yo, he's like, come in here, you sick fuck, and just get what you need. It's like, wow. Well, I mean, to be fair, he's getting paid a lot to do what he's doing, so. What was it? Yeah, he was offering Joe. He's like, yeah, I got a vagina in here. Yeah, it's a little run down, but it'll get the job done for 500. He's like, what kind of people do you have coming in here? He's basically almost like people, well, people like you, and obviously just people of all kinds. So it's just interesting. And sadly, Joel went through all that trouble to get it, even though he didn't need to, because Abby went off and the whole, is it Goran? That whole situation, which was super creepy. But you had, Sheila ripping him to pieces and literally turning the kitchen into a bloody mess. That was crazy. I also love the introduction of what was it, Krista and Chris. You had Chris being played by Joe McHale, and then his wife Krista played by Maggie Lawson. I was like, what? I love the introduction to them. They didn't pop up a lot, but I did appreciate them being the realtors. Realtors. I'm saying it like that too. It's like, oh, you can say it both ways. It's like, no, one way's right and one way's wrong. I say realtors. Realtors. Realtors is the real word, and realtors. Either way. I love that whole thing, especially like Krista had a line that just stuck out to me. I was like, I'm gonna kick you so hard in your vagina that you'll get pregnant through your giving blowjobs. Even like she was kind of like, oh wow, it messes with me a little bit because I always associate Maggie Lawson with Juliet O'Hara, her character she played on Psych, and just Julia's like the nicest person ever, and then I see her playing like such a mean person in this. It's just like what? Also finding out that like Christian is your kid, and it's like, oh, Chris, Krista, and Christian. I also love that whole thing about letting that lady's dog out, and it's like, oh man, Chris must have left the door open, and then Sheila like grabbing the dog. I was kind of worried because I thought like Sheila was going to eat the dog. I was like, oh, you're going to go through all that trouble and just eat the dog and have to come back like, yep, never found it. I was like, oh, but nope, came back victorious. I thought that was pretty neat. But also later on, it's just like how much they hate. It's like, oh, they're telling Abby to apologize to Christian. And it's just like, oh, they found out it's Chris and Krista's child. And they're like, ooh, fuck them. I hate them so much. Even at one point, Joel was referencing the fact that she talked about getting a dildo and fucking us. Just how much they hated those guys. Even that whole Principal Novak situation of like, trying to get him to, it's like, okay, Abby confesses and everything, and it's like, oh man, yeah, that's good thing she came forward. Yeah, she's expelled, but he ended up breaking off Sheila's finger, and they're using that to her advantage. It's like, yeah, Abby only got suspended, and they're like, yeah, and Abby's like, yeah, maybe we should be dancing while you have one of your fingers in your pocket. It's like, yeah, let's get out of here. I'm so proud of the little moments. Like I said, what I love most about the show is that they are fuck ups because they don't know what they're doing. They're trying to balance this whole like undead life for Sheila, and Joel's trying to do his best there, but at the same time, it's like, oh, we also have to worry about our daughter, and it's like we're messing up there because even Abby was at one point, it's like, oh, look at our daughter, she's understanding, she's apologetic, because like they finally explained everything, like everything's kind of falling apart. They're trying to keep, and they're trying to juggle and everything. They're trying to juggle so much at once. And Abby kind of, because, it's still that aspect of they're still keeping secrets from each other, even though they made a big deal out of it last season. Like, we're not going to keep secrets from each other, but they continued to do it. And the whole situation with this just kind of put things in perspective for Abby, so she was kind of like making things easier for her. And it's like, oh, look at her daughter, like she actually, she cares. She's not a monster. She's like, wait, you thought I was a monster? Oh, ignore that. It was just, I guess it's just because of the way Abby's been acting. Like she's like, I'm not apologetic. Honestly, I don't feel sorry. So you want me to lie? You want me to fake it? And it's kind of like, no, but at the same time, yes, which is so interesting. Like they took her character in a very interesting direction. And I guess is this kind of one of those situations where it's like, this is who she's always kind of been, but like Sheila becoming undead kind of set her free, which is kind of an interesting thing. And I appreciate they kind of brought that up. Even finding out Ramona, I didn't even think about it when upon her finding out that she's undead until she pointed it out herself. It's like, honestly, the personality she is now isn't who she originally was. She was actually an auctioneer because she was one of those people, like she was kind of high of full energy, but like being kind of the lower, slower, just kind of like calm person she is now is because of becoming an undead, because it's the person she always wanted to be, which is so interesting that you would want to become that person, like a more calmer, duller person. It's just kind of interesting, but it's like, hey, to each one their own prerogative, but still. So maybe it's something like that with Abby, but I'm kind of leaning more through like, oh yeah, all the shit she's kind of seen over the course of this season and last season, which apparently over the course of all of this, it's still only over the course of like maybe 3 or 4 weeks in the entirety, which I always appreciate when storylines take place literally like over the course of like a small amount of time like that. It's always interesting to me. I don't know why. I just like that when it comes to storytelling. Because probably even by the end of the season, it's probably been like, what, maybe another week, so it might have been like maybe a month, maybe a little bit over by the end of the season. That's how I chalk it up, but still. Also, really quick, I meant to bring this up. I guess because of his whole academic aspect, but it's always interesting to me that Principal Novak pays such attention to Eric. I mean, in a creepy sense of like, oh, he's like yelling at Abby about something. He's like, oh, Eric, come in, just kind of fixes his hair and everything. It's like, that's weird and a little creepy that he does that. Also, another thing I thought was kind of interesting too, that this season they split up again. I'm like, why would you split up? There was literally a storyline last season about you guys no longer splitting up. Like Joel was trying to God, what was he doing? Sheila was doing the whole thing with Carl trying to get that business stuff handled, and Joel was dealing with that other dude that could potentially be a zombie because they ended up finding out that it was all related to the clams that started all of this. And which is kind of interesting. It turned into a whole conversation where like Sheila blames herself because she's like, this would have all started if she hadn't accepted the clams, because it was basically there was a problem, like they ran out of something, or they sent her to, like, it was something wrong with the meal, but she just, because she was very meek back then, it's kind of the word I've most recently used to describe her in the nerd mode, so that's why I'm using it now. It's the fact is, because she was very like that, just not willing to start up a problem, she was too timid, she didn't say anything, so she just ate the clams, so she blames herself, but Joel blames himself because it's like, well, because he got super high and didn't have fixed dinner like he was supposed to. He was going to order pizza, but they had to order out, so it's like, yeah, he's the reason why. So it's like, ultimately, she was like, no, it's nobody's fault, which is like, oh, that's sweet. I'm glad it didn't turn into a blaming game, even though they've had multiple times throughout the season kind of having a blaming game of like, oh yeah, oh, there's this, and it's like, oh no, it's that, type of thing. So, but nevertheless, I did appreciate the Carl thing. Obviously, Carl being believed by Andy Richter. It's like, man, Carl is an asshole. Just the way he talks to Sheila, and it's like that all spanning with her, like because she's bottling it all in, it kind of comes out in different ways. Like one way was with her eye, and the other one was her literally biting her finger off. Which I appreciate that as kind of being a storyline detail that they're building upon last season. Because the way Eric explained it, like they could actually reattach his finger. It's something I completely forgot about and didn't even pay attention to. That even though she's kind of undead, those cells are still alive. The difference between her finger and her toe is her toe rotted off. That was just kind of naturally, like, I guess the cells in that part of her body finally dying off. But there was enough left that, you keep it bandaged, that enough, like, it'll kind of do its own thing and heal on its own, which was pretty neat. So to understand that that's how their bodies kind of work and operate like that. I mean, to be fair, her eyes fell out last season, and one of her eye sockets, her eyes fell out her eye socket, and she was able to pop it back in. So I guess that kind of works in a similar sense, but nevertheless, you even find out that Ramona was going through the same thing, and so she had to, she was velcroing her ear back on. That was kind of interesting. But man, Carl was such a dick, and I love that storyline of her kind of going like in a fugue state. She's just kind of like, okay, I need to get calm, and it hard cuts to her waking up, and she's covered in blood. I'm like, what? Did she sleep kill people? And you're stressing the entire time, like, oh my god, I killed Carl. Oh, I didn't kill Carl. Who did I kill? Oh, I killed one of the Nazis, which I love that storyline. I'm gonna get to that in a second. But it's like, I love that aspect of it, because that was such an interesting aspect to it. Like I said, they built upon the zombieism, undeadism in this, and it's like, even in that fugue state, she knew to clean up the scene. She even took off the shoe and stabbed him in the brain just to make sure that he wouldn't come back as a zombie because of the whole Gary situation, which I'm gonna get to that as well. I gotta remind myself to come back to that. And even cleaned it up in that fugue state. So I wonder if that was something that's only come up in that part of the season. Maybe it's just because she would, well, to be fair, it's like Eric said, it would come out in some other shape or form. So maybe since she never was bottling up so much stress like that for the rest of the season, it was never an issue. Which was kind of sad, because for her, it's like, oh man, she knows how she kills and everything, just kind of being part of her nature and stuff like that. But to actually see it was just kind of a little depressing. But it was also very impressive, because even Joel's comment is like, look at you, you're cleaning up the place, getting rid of blood and everything. It's like, wow, she was doing a very good job, even kind of in her fugue, sleepwalking state was kind of interesting. But as I was mentioning earlier, the whole Nazi thing was kind of like, I like that too. It's another thing they pulled from season one. They're like, remember we were talking about, oh, the perfect person would be a single young Hitler or whatever. And it's like, well, we found it because they helped out Gary's niece, Kayla, whose ex-boyfriend turns out to be a Nazi, which I love that whole stupid little bit. Like, oh my God, Joel's like, oh my God. Oh, this bookshelf is amazing. Oh my God. Look at this thing about the bookshelf. Oh my God. Finally noticing all the Nazi memorabilia. And it's just, cause like, oh man, you look like normal white people. And it's like, did he say white people? And then just that whole thing. And it's like, oh my God, look at all these Nazis that Sheila could eat. It's like, come on, they're terrible people. It's like, no, we're not going to kill him. Come on, they're terrible people. We might as well kill them. That was just so messed up. And then later on when it's like, oh my God, we can't do this. Why? The other Nazi dude is in a wheelchair. It's like, well, he's a Nazi, but he's in a wheelchair. So, and it turned into that whole moral dilemma about what they should do. Because it's like, well, would it be more discriminating if we didn't eat him? Because he would, because it'd be us treating him any differently? Or would it be messed up because like he's already kind of in a shitty situation, being confined to a wheelchair and everything, and then we shouldn't eat him for that? And it's like they were actually having a debate about this. It's like, oh, we should actually go back home and just debate the moral stuff to it. And then you're like, no, we can't help you. It's like, oh, you changed your mind the moment you found out I'm a wheelchair. And it's just like, he's like, how dare you judge people like that on something like that? They're like, really? You've got the nerve to talk, you freaking Nazi? And just that whole bit was so interesting to me. The fact of the matter is, interestingly enough, they never actually made it through the entire Nazi team. Apparently, there's only those two plus the one that she killed in her fugue state that was Boone's friend. So she only killed 3 Nazis. There was like a whole baseball team full of them. So that might be something we kind of see in the future. I also appreciate this season, like, pushing the whole Anne and Lisa thing even more, and then being so upfront about it and even not even denying it. Just being like, oh man, and I love Anne just being so imposing and stuff like that. It's like you could tell stuff was kind of getting suspicious to her, especially when she started painting everything. And even Joel, the nervous neighbor picture, I thought that was pretty neat. And along with them being screw-ups, every time they try to push Anne away from an investigation, they just ended up sadly just motivating her even more to dig even deeper. I thought that was kind of interesting. I appreciate what they did with Anne, and I'm super glad they didn't kill her. I was worried in the final episode. I'm like, oh my God, they're going to kill her. But then she ends up, and I thought it was kind of neat how she ended up catching them. It's like because I thought she was going to figure it out at the baptism when Sheila was kind of moving around, shaking the jewelry. I was like, because the moment like Gary finished the message and she starts shaking, I'm like, that's on the recording. I was like, you didn't cut the phone off until after you started jingling. I was like, that's gonna come back to bite you in the ass. I know it is. And it's like, and it ultimately ended up being the undoing. It's like, oh, the other messages couldn't be gotten back because Joel had bought a super cheap phone and they didn't keep those voicemails for stuff like that. So I was like, oh man, they're safe. And then it turns out that was kind of their undoing. But that twist at the end of like, oh yeah, they explained everything to Anne. It's like, we only do it to evil people. It's like, so God sent you to get rid of evildoers? And they're like, wasn't what we were aiming for, but sure, let's go with that. And because Anne is super religious, it played into that. And it's like, God send me a sign, and it's like huge explosion, which obviously is Abby and Eric blowing up that whole thing with the whole fracking, which is so interesting that she super got into that. I guess, I mean, it kind of makes sense when Abby explained it later on, being like, she wants to leave her mark on the world and everything. So that was pretty neat. Also, more reason why I like that too, because they had that whole plan of like, oh yeah, we're going to leave and everything, and we're going to drop Abby off at my sister's place, Sheila's sister's place. And I always think that's kind of interesting in stories like this too. Is like, we've yet to actually see the outside. Like, we've heard talk about Joel's family and Sheila's, but we've never actually met them. I mean, once again, to be fair, this is all taking place over the course of basically almost a month. So I'm sure the last thing they want to do is necessarily get their family involved in all of this. Maybe that'll be time to see something we could possibly see written into the show going in, in the future. I mean, would that be something they're willing to share with their respective family, like Abby's sister or like their parents or something like that? Would that be? I don't know. It'd be kind of interesting. But I love Abby being like, no, you're not going to leave me behind. We're a family in this. And besides, it's like, you guys are basically doomed without me. It's like, for one, I've already got a bad pact. I've had it ever since you killed Gary, which, interesting enough, even Joel kind of was slightly prepared, because this was his plan. The moment she killed Gary, this was always floating in the back of his head. Because I thought it was kind of sweet too. It's like, yeah, we're going to have to leave Abby behind, but this way, we don't want her, drag her through all of this. You know, she's a teenager. We shouldn't ruin her life. But it's like, we'll go on a run together. And it's like, because if he catches us, we'll be split up. We'll never see each other again. It's like, for him, it's like, oh, like, I love you so much. I never want to be separated from you. So if we're on the run, we're on the run. But that way, we're together. And even saying, like, when it comes down to it, if we get caught, let me take the blame, because I need you to be there for Abby. He could have brought up another point, but he never brought it up, which is a good thing. Which is a point I would have thought about. It's like, well, if you go to jail, you're a zombie. And what if you lose control and get super hungry and you start eating people? But then Joel also brought up a point later on. It's like, they'll do much worse when they find out, you know, what you really are and everything. And that was that point. But it's like, earlier you could have thrown out, like, plus if you go to jail, you could eat some people, or even worse, turn them into zombies too. And that turns into an epidemic in prison. So there's that. But never got to that point. But the point is, I brought up earlier, is like Abby being the smart one, because even she's like, you're packing too much, and you might want to pull stuff out of your bank account before they freeze it. And then Joel's like, man, what were we thinking? We need her. It's like, yeah, you're the adults in the situation, but she's the criminal mastermind. It's kind of interesting how it works out like that. And also, because I brought him up earlier, I meant to get back to it, is freaking Gary. I did not, like, I kind of got it spoiled because of the trailer. I wish I hadn't seen it, but I do appreciate the whole Gary thing. I was like, oh, how has that happened? What happened to that? Like, because I remember seeing the scene where Abby opens it and he's like, oh, hey, I'm Gary. She's like, I really cannot deal with this right now, you know. And so I was wondering how that happened. It's like, oh yeah, they were moving Gary's body, because that's where, like, the housing development was going to start, was in that area. And it's like, oh yeah, Gary's actually alive. It's like, right, because Sheila bit him first, but they never destroyed his brain. And then there was the whole thing of like, oh, you do this for Killa, then you can kill me. It's like, well, I don't want to die now. And Gary actually became a good guy. We're like, hey, we're being friends. It's also because it's Nathan Fillion, so that plays a big part in that too. Kai, she felt bad. I was like, oh man, Nathan Fillion's in this. Last season, I was like, oh man, Nathan Fillion. Oh, he's dead already. I was like, oh. I wasn't expecting them to bring him back as like a recurring character. And with where things left off, probably see him even more in the future potentially. I mean, granted, at the end of it, he was like, kill me. Like the laughs, and you know, it actually sucked because Joel initially hated Gary, because Gary was kind of a douchebag. But it's like, you know, much like everyone else, when he became an undead, it changed his personality. But it was kind of sad that he was just kind of like, yeah, I have nothing else to live for. I don't want to be stuck like this forever, you know. He's just the head now, so. But like, he's able to joke and everything. Him and Joel are having a great time, and it's just like, it was like a friendship was formed there, because honestly, he's the only person Joel can talk to. I even love that being part of the story of like, oh yeah, like him and Rick actually have a falling out because he can't explain everything to Rick, which is like. I mean, the way he talked about Rick before, especially in the first season, it's like, well, it's not like Rick's like the most attentive cop. Dan was kind of one, but that's just because he was kind of a power tripping douchebag. Rick is a little bit different, so I think maybe you could tell Rick. I'm curious, like, what would happen if they did tell their neighbors? I mean, I don't think Lisa's that bent out of shape about Dan. It's like, oh, he was a criminal, he was a douchebag. She's with Lisa. I mean, she's with Anne, and she's happy, so, you know. There was this one line from Eric that he was kind of like trying to distract her. He's like, can I call you mom? He's like, nah, that's kind of weird. She never actually said no. I would have been very interested to know, like, how Anne really felt about that. Like, oh, I mean, I'm dating your mom and everything, but I guess it could be, you can call me mom. I thought it would have been sweet if something like that had come up. I wonder what's going to happen now that she knows the truth, and then Eric's going to know the truth, and then are they going to tell Lisa or not? Because like 2/3 of that family now knows. I mean, well, she's kind of Anne's part of like, isn't her last name Bemis? Yeah, she's part of the Bemis family now to a certain extent. So 2/3 of that family knows. So that's kind of interesting. I'd love to like Joel to finally break it down and tell Rick, but at least now he has Gary he could talk to kind of compensate for that. So also the whole thing with Ruby, like who is that actress? That actress seems so familiar. The one who plays Ruby, I feel like I've seen her in something before. Is she like from SNL or something? I feel like I might remember her from SNL, but I feel like she was a brunette instead of a blonde. That's what I'm thinking. That's it. That might be what that is. I love that whole like when Joel got there and everything. You could tell she was super hard hitting on him. It's like, oh, well, not on Joel, unnerving. And it's just like, oh, you came here to steal my clams and seduce me. And he's like, well, first of all, you were the one that was all over me the moment I came here and everything. And even when Sheila's there with him later on, he kind of gives her a look like, don't worry about it. I also love that the whole situation with Paul and Marcia trying to like they hit like he sucks with the rocket launcher and just shoots it and it explodes in front of the barn that has all the infected clams, and then Marsha's the one that fires it and explodes, and it's like, oh baby, we'll have a baby, and she's like, oh don't say that unless you really mean it. It's like, well, don't look so beautiful if you don't want me to love you, which I'm like, oh, that's sort of sweet. I mean, it'd be even more sweeter if you weren't trying to kill our quote unquote bumbling heroes, you know? Which I'm surprised that didn't turn out to be even more of a thing. That was actually kind of a heavy like background thing, actually. I mean, currently they're the only ones. Once again, it's only Paul. Marsha's not a part of this, but it's like, I guess in a sense of like, well, the fact of the matter is, like, we're in a relationship, so what's his thing is my thing, dude, type of thing. So, which is cute. It's like, oh, we're bonding, just like Joel and Sheila bond over murdering people and Sheila eating them. They bond over killing the undead and stuff like that. Obviously, they don't really know everything. They learned a little bit from Ron. Which that was kind of surprising, like a sad story at the beginning. It's like, oh yeah, like Ron had literally just lost his wife like a week ago, and even Joel's coming, oh man, that sucks, dude. It kind of sent him spiraling a little bit more. That's kind of what set him off to kind of end up at the facility at the beginning. I really appreciate the fact is that he got out, and then because like Joel was getting on Sheila so much about befriending Anne, and now Anne's kind of getting closer and closer to him, and then it shows, oh, Ron, it's like, oh, this is Sheila, huh? This is your wife, this is the one that kind of your stereotypical like zombie and everything, and she's like, really? You're going to get on me about it, and you're going to tell him? And almost being, I guess, almost looking at it in a derogatory way. And it's like, oh, and that's how you describe me to him? And it's like, no, that was all Ron. And even at one point, Joe had to be like, I need to shut up. Why am I even telling you all of this stuff? Like I said, once again, going back to the fact that he has Gary to come and talk to. So, all right, there's also Mark, the dude that Japopos. I love that ended up being a bigger plot thing because it's just kind of like because they vaguely bring that up in season one. And I mean, to be like, it's just kind of interesting how that comes back in season two and has more of a plot relevance. Because I think he brought it, like, I don't think he ever really brought it up until like the end of season one where he's like, oh yeah, Japopos. And he was spelling it out to the doctor that, had him and everything. And it was like, Mark was kind of like, oh, like, we remember who you are, Joel. Write a good review and then we'll help you because but then he was like, oh, tell me, like, it's like him and the whole father-son business thing that Eric had set up too. I just thought that was so neat. That basically both plans fell apart, especially when Mark was like, so tell me you're actually doing this documentary on Tippett because my wife is super excited about Axe. So it's like, damn it. It's like he was actually super excited about that, which even Joel was kind of admitting. It's like, oh, that's actually kind of an interesting concept for I wonder if this documentary actually exists like that. Would it be, is there even an audience really for that? I mean, like I said, Joel seemed like he'd be personally into it, but nevertheless. Like, overall, this was a fantastic season, and I'm so interested to see, I mean, I don't know if this is getting renewed for a third season, but I'd be so interested to see where they take it, because there's so much to kind of build upon. Obviously, Eric and Abby, because it's like, oh, should we talk about the kiss? It's like, no, let's not. In case it's like, oh, I don't want to kiss because if I do, that means we might not be able to, we won't see each other again. So there's that. Them actually exploding those propane tanks or whatever for the whole fracking thing. Wondering will we see any more Chris and Krista as well as Christian? Because let's not forget, Eric never got his damn drone back, did he? Christian was a dick and was like, oh, you're a friend of Abby's? Took the drone and that never came back. I'm wondering will we kind of see a more assertive Eric next season or not? I kind of also get this weird inkling. Like, I thought it might happen this season was that Joel might turn into a zombie. Like, when Anne shows up, I thought something was going to happen and she's going to shoot Joel and then, like, Sheila was going to turn him something. So she'd have, like, Abby would have to deal with two parents. I get the feeling like something like that might happen. I don't know. They might make it so that it's never the rest of the family, that it is purely Sheila. I'm surprised that hasn't come up yet. Either Sheila's very careful or they just haven't bothered with the whole aspect of, like, you don't necessarily have to scratch someone, that it is, like, it is, by mouth, saliva, by passing on the disease and stuff like that. So But nevertheless, you also, I can't forget, like, Sheila and Joel also, like, are starting their own business too. Um, so, which I love that being a whole thing where Sheila's like, oh, you just stood there while Carl fired me, which Carl was like, oh no, Joel can stay. Which is like, why did he have such a bug up his ass about Sheila and not one about Joel? Because he was like treating Sheila like shit, like blah, 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 blah. Oh, hey, Joe, don't worry, you can come in and work tomorrow. I was like, what? Why? Why are you being such a, why? That was never kind of explained. I guess that's just comment, once again, Carl's an asshole. We kind of already established that earlier in the recording. Then there's a whole situation with Anne. Like I said, will we have a situation where Anne kind of, is it going to be more of a Dexter situation, but it's like with her, like, you know how Dexter's dad was kind of like, oh, I'll point you in the right direction, kind of give you a good thing to do with your ability, with what your dark passenger, essentially. She might do that, like, oh, here's some kind of do the Dan thing, but being less of a dick about it and less of a blackmailing situation of like, oh, because she thinks this is the Lord's work or something, you know? So I'm curious to see what they do with Anne, you know? Like, that was a twist I wasn't expecting. I was like, holy shit, they're literally ending this season off of a stinger like that. That's pretty neat. So there's that. Also, like I said, where Joel and Rick will stand in next season, like, and also how they will expand upon zombieism is. And like I said, because so far they've expanded upon it a lot more about, you know, what what the undead are capable of. Like, obviously, it seems like the only real three that were born from this. Well, there currently are two at the very least in this whole situation, because there's Sheila and Gary who's still alive. Obviously, Ramona's in Seattle, and the other dude, Ed. Interestingly enough, it's the actor who played Barlow on Longmire. Just I don't know, I guess because it's a Netflix show and this is a Netflix show. I don't know, just what way my mind works. I thought it was kind of interesting how that whole played out too, because I was thinking like, oh man, he's going. I was like, is he one? Is he not? And he's eating a Danish dish. I'm like, oh, so maybe he's not, or maybe Joel's going to think he's not, leave, and it turns out he is, and maybe, you know, I thought that turned into something, but it seemed like he was too far gone, and that was kind of an interesting thing too. Like with that, I completely forgot to talk about this. Effect is with the serum only. Well, it's kind of something that Wolf brought up last season. It's like it stops you at what you are now. Obviously, for Sheila, it was like she kind of got all rabid, and it's like, oh yeah, like injecting her made it so like at this point in time where she was kind of very rabid and willing to kind of go a little crazy, that it ended up, you know, meaning that she would kind of start at that place. So because they didn't get a cure to her necessarily in time, in this particular dude's case, he would have stayed feral even if they had given him the cure anyway, which is something that never really comes up to. Well, I guess like I said, the it does still come up because it's like when she went in her fugue state and killed that Nazi dude. So there's that. But I feel like she didn't have any more like even like crazy bloody outbursts like at the beginning or that fugue state situation. But maybe that's just because she found other ways to kind of like handle herself. Like, you know, those were growing pains type of situation of what she learned from them. So I don't know. I'm also curious to see, because like we know this all started with those clams in Serbia. Just because it stopped here doesn't mean that, I mean, to be fair, like Ruby had never sold them to anyone else, so they hadn't spread at that point in time. But maybe there's, well, because it seemed like going forward the biggest storyline will probably be like the hunters hunting the undead. So they don't seem like they're the most collected like bad guys either, which is interesting to call them bad guys considering they're kind of the good guys in this sense, when in actuality Joel and Sheila are kind of the bad guys. It's just interesting how those type of things work like that. So like I said, I'd be so interested to see what a third season would do and bring to us. So, but really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good